based on last night, which, by the way, Perry and team, I thought was very exciting when we saw the students really put their teeth in what analytics is. I realized that I wasn't really prepared to be that technical, so I asked our partners, IBM, to help out with statistics and analytics, and John Longbottom created a formula that I think solves all our problems, John. So if anybody has any questions, you can ask John, because I won't really be talking about that. I'll talk about what's really happening in the world that is driving this from a perspective to Al's introduction when we look at the next generation of community development, community growth. Some projects right in your backyard here that we're very involved in and are very exciting for us, all the way to new cities and new communities around the world, where we get a lot of lessons learned from as to the importance of data and big data, lots of it, and the cloud and analytics, and how that really all starts to shape and change the landscape in which I know for sure we work in. And a lot of that starts maybe with the crowd that we had here last night, and we're up here presenting. And I think it's really that generation probably that has triggered and instigated a lot of this whole notion of big data, which is really around the whole social media and the social networking. And you've seen all these numbers, and they still are staggering to me, where we just look at Twitter, over nearly 500 million people on Twitter, 175 million tweets a day. They are producing or generating about 8 terabit of data every day, and these are only 140 character like tweets. So if you just think about just one of them, Facebook, another one, 900 million people on Facebook uploading 30 billion pieces of content, different types of content each and every month. And these are just two, and we can go on Facebook and all these other social media sites, or YouTube, that have profoundly changed how we look at data, how we communicate with data, and how we communicate amongst ourselves. And that makes a happy cloud, right? A lot of that doesn't happen on my PC or our corporate environment. A lot of that happens anywhere in the world. We don't know where it happens. But we really haven't seen anything yet. And that really is driving the growth, or what we see is the growth of devices and systems. Is this working okay, or does it sound like coming in and out? No, it's just me? Okay. And I know being here on day 3 means I may show some data and facts that I thought were very cool, but you probably have seen for 2 days in a row. One being that the anticipation is that over 50 billion devices are being connected over networks and the internet in only 8 or 10 years from now. And it's this massive hockey stick growth that is calling infrastructure companies to build infrastructure to absorb and to support this transition or transactions of data, but also crowd, I think, like this to really rethink what we do with it and how do we monetize it, how do we capitalize on it, and how we really drive incremental value of this. And what's really driving a lot of this, of course, is the internet. We've seen these kind of waves and trends, and we've gone through how the business was using it to obviously the consumerization of it, which is really where Facebook and YouTube and Twitter kind of were born. But what really has led to the wave that we're in, and that's the industrialization of the internet, where it's not so much us anymore, regardless of how much data we consume amongst ourselves, but it's devices and the machines and the systems that are all coming online in one way or another and starting to have the need to communicate with one another to deliver incremental value. We'll talk about value in a second. Which really is starting to change everything we do, everything we experience on a day-to-day basis, how we consume movies, if we go to the theater at all, how we stay in hotels and what we expect there, what we do in our house, how we control our energy or would like to control our energy, and how we deal with audio-visual and home automation solutions. How we look at transportation, healthcare, education, like everything really is starting to completely be transformed. And a lot of industries already have gone through that. Some industries are trailing behind. And where it really becomes interesting is where we look at the cross-section of those industries. It's not just about an industry anymore, but now we deliver health on mobile devices, health services, or health into the home, or give people the tools to commute or transport themselves better and wiser through congested cities. And it's this kind of interaction between services and data in all these different kind of aspects of our lives that we call the foundation of our program, Smart Connected Communities, what CISCO, what IBM calls Smarter Cities, where we really start to run cities and run communities and optimize those because of the data and the information and the capabilities we now have and never really had before in a world on network, in a connected world on networked information. And why we really do that? Frankly, it's not about the technology anymore, and it's not about maybe the data. It's about what we're going to do with it to really drive incremental value to all the constituents in these communities. And we just lumped them here together as three. How do we deliver social sustainable value, social sustainability? How do we make people healthier, a happier life? How do we give them the tools to really use not just technology, but the environment and physical environments and the infrastructure around us to really augment how we want to live and where and when. Environmental sustainability. How do we collectively reduce our footprint, if you will? And it goes way beyond just energy consumption, but it's every aspect of what we do, delivering a greener world, a greener community. And then economic sustainability. How do we together generate new opportunities, new business opportunities, new business models, new ways of not just making money, but creating jobs and creating industries and creating opportunities. And we believe that in order really to address all these, we do need to look at the world differently. And frankly, it's happening as we see everything and everyone become connected. And it's having a tremendous impact on data growth. We just look at McKinsey studies, I think from last year or 2 years ago, where they say that the volume of data is growing 40% per year and will increase in the 10 years from 2010 to 2020, 44 times. But it's not just about the volume. And we were talking last night about the volume, velocity, variety, and I had it here, and somebody said, take it out, because everyone talked about this, and it's on Wikipedia, so everyone can look this stuff up. But it's really the fourth dimension that may have not been well discussed or uncovered, and that's the value component of it. And frankly, without understanding the value, why we need this data, and how we turn this data into opportunities for everyone living in communities, working communities, for all of us, frankly, the fact that we have a lot of data, and wherever it is almost irrelevant. And you've seen all the examples on how it's having profound impact on everything we do. And these are also McKinsey studies, and I think you've seen some of the data fly by over the last 2 days. Manufacturing benefiting from big data as they're able to decrease product development costs by 50%, reduce the need for working capital. Healthcare in the US, $300 billion value through productivity and efficiency, increase of productivity growth. Public sector in Europe, looking at ways to deliver more efficient and more, call it on-demand government services. Opportunity eliminate $250 billion per year. Personal data as to how we as a consumer on us can benefit from this. Not only a tremendous opportunity for the cable companies and the service providers, but opportunities for us to really participate in a whole new world of interactions and transactions, and which can be monetized. Retail, we end up shopping more, and the retailers can, as they already are, really start to use this big data to much better cater to the needs of its buyers, with the result of increase of growth, increase of sales, increase of margin. And these are not just studies anymore. I think we use sometimes the concept big data and even analytics as if we just invented it. But in reality, a lot of the concepts we discuss are not new, well, relatively, and that a lot of companies already benefiting from the notion of mining data and turning it into a business opportunity and into a revenue opportunity. But there's still tremendous opportunity out there. You probably all have seen these slides fly by, but if you look at The industries related to their productivity growth, these are US data, with the industry I'm from, construction, all the way at the bottom, declining productivity, and not quite woken up yet on how to potentially benefit from big data. But if you look at the big bubbles like government, healthcare, real estate, as in the infrastructure that makes up our communities, tremendous opportunities to really turn the data that we have and the data that we generate into opportunities to increase our productivity and our revenue opportunities. Now, we have all this big data, and it's growing and growing, and more bits and bytes and zettabytes and petabytes and all those zeros. It has to flow through something, from people to machines. We have to orchestrate this transport of this big data, and that's obviously where the networks come in and are kind of really the foundation for enabling the big data and the analytics. And we've seen in the last couple of years tremendous growth of capacity to absorb this increased consumption, right? So if you look at the little dots, and I was told they're really kind of the right size if you compare them. What we have today probably up to is, it's cable modem in the house, if all that much. But if we look at new communities, or what everyone is talking about is the whole gigabit per second, the gigabit to the home, and that's kind of the capacity of the pipe, the yellow pipe. Do we really need that today? Pushing more bits and bytes through it, more TV? Maybe not today. But with what we see happening using the internet and in the social media world and in the kind of industrialization of the internet, we know that the world will be changing quick, and that the capacity we have built out today will be obsolete much sooner than we ever anticipated. If you just think about some of these trends that are coming our way, like 3D IP television in the house, looking at completely new ways of operating and managing our lives or managing our cities through kind of integrated operations centers. And then there's already the talk about in some communities about how do we get this to 10 gig to the home. So this is just starting. And the studies that kind of validate this here from Gartner and the United Nations is you not so much like you build them and they come, but once the pipe is there, it does give you the opportunity to create that additional value using the data and using the abilities you have to interact with this infrastructure to drive and increase our GDP. I'll go the wrong way. So that kind of whole concept we're actually taking as a company with our partners right here, I forget, north of here to Ramparts Avenir Communities, which is a 400 acres new development in St. Albert, where the owner and the developer has really embraced the whole notion, not just of let's build a gig to the home and they will come, but let's start to think about value-added services and capabilities that really drive opportunities for the people and the businesses that are going to reside in this community. But then if we build a scalable and extendable infrastructure, that it's those in the community can now start to deliver or participate in a much broader and a much more regional dialogue in terms of delivering and managing services outside of this particular community. So there we talked briefly about value and what services. So not to say it's not about the data and it's not about the pipe, but it's about how do we create a new experience for the people and the businesses in there. And then data and the analytics turns out to be actually a very exciting topic. Companies being drawn to this community and its capabilities that are going to be built to potentially become kind of a home there for the industry of analytics, if you will. But really with the intent not to just stay within the boundaries of this community, but to completely create a platform to change the region in Alberta and to roll out through Canada and the rest. So there we're going to see a lot of great kind of ideas being now possible because of the approach that's being taken and being that the notion is there that big data and connectivity and cloud are really going to be the new foundation for any kind of community, new or old. So just a few ideas, a few concepts being discussed, and we'll look at our partners around the world, like intelligent lighting. It's not just about a street light anymore. Every street light becomes an IP address, which is a lot of data right there, knowing exactly how long the bulb has been on and what the maintenance is and if it's working well, but now take through sensor technology to step further, that we can actually sensor how many people are in the vicinity of that street line, and we can start to look at traffic optimization and flows of people in this community, and then start to serve that up to the analytics world, to students like we saw yesterday, to really start to look at how can we use that now cleverly and create optimization for this community. So there is less congestion, more happiness, more health, more social opportunities, and maybe more economic opportunities. Looking at, because now the data is available, or should be available, and with this community we're looking at open access, so there's no more boundaries and no more carving out opportunities or businesses, but it becomes all open and shareable. How do we now have the citizens and the people in and around the community freely interact with it, so that they can create their own revenue and business opportunities, that the services being delivered are presence-based, depending on my desires, my needs at the right time? How do we extend it to creating a safer opportunity, including the whole notion of messaging if something is up? And that could be environmental or safety and security. Looking at endpoints like signage and media and our mobile devices to really start to communicate somewhat maybe automatically because of the intelligence we can put into this community. And then obviously we talk about energy a lot, and this is probably the right province to do it, and certainly the appetite of the mayor in St. Albert and the developer of the community. And I think Dave Bromley's here, and you're going to talk more about this community, right, in the breakout session after this. Where we're looking at, we can now mine all this data on, for instance, energy, or its carbon, or water consumption, but then really start to look at, okay, how can we turn that into that environmental analytics and really not drive efficiencies and opportunities for Rempart, but to become the model, frankly, for the world. And so we're very excited to be part of that one, and I think it will see from it spin off a lot of opportunities. As we then build that infrastructure, that enabling infrastructure, we have also different ways to really deliver new services. And again, I keep hammering on this whole value notion, because at the end of the day, if we don't get that clear, then it's just data crunching and more data, and more bigger data doesn't make us happier. But applying the big data right to deliver the right services on the right time in the right way, that's really what will differentiate us, I think, as to from a value creation perspective. So we're looking at how can we now enable, using big data and using analytics, to create kind of constant personalized transactions. And you see here like how we use video for that, which is obviously yet another one why we need that bigger pipe, because if you just look at our company, about 70% of our interactions are currently done over video. So 70% of traffic on our networks in our company is video, and it's just the beginning of what we're going to see in communities and in other businesses. And at the end, as long as we appreciate amongst us here, because it's one thing to talk about analytics, but we understand that it's all about the people that are going to benefit and use from this. And it really boils down to the citizens and giving them the access to it. Which kind of relates to an example also we did here in Edmonton, which is with Mike Holmes, and I think was it talked about yesterday, or was it at a different event? Maybe it was somewhere else. Oh, that was, sorry, yeah. Where Mike Holmes has teamed up with the Métis to build a retirement home. Thanks. A retirement home for disabled Métis Aboriginal people, and you see here Larry sitting in a wheelchair looking at ways to interact with his home much more effectively, and using mobile devices to control every aspect of his life in his home. And again, it's making information available in a way that he can consume it and that he can use to really enhance his life's experience. So if we kind of stack this out and what this kind of would look like, and what we think the important pieces are, is that the conversations we've had here, and I think the breakouts kind of show that in terms of the topics, it's really understand the value. It's not the widgets and the capabilities and the data and the database it sits in, but it's understanding why we really want this, and how we use this to collectively monetize this. Not necessarily for us in the room, but there has to be a benefit, a perceived, not just a perceived, but an effectual benefit. And that may create whole new businesses, whole new business models, not maybe in industry, but new opportunities that we can all benefit from. And then, yes, there are the widgets. There are, and I've heard some conversations and presentations say there's a lot of smart devices that can create or generate data that can push it up the stack, if you will. But that's almost also kind of the boring part because that world is happening and we're moving that way. As we said, everything gets connected. Where we really need to kind of all come together is that middle piece. How do we move these bits and bytes more freely around? Less manual work, if you will, and if we then have it, how do we operate the data? How do we orchestrate it so it get moved around to in the right hands, the right people, and that too big data is not necessarily a good thing because it's a lot of data, but we use it for the right reasons. And this is really where we see a lot of the intelligence come in and the opportunities for us to really capture the opportunities and own up to this. And there's the cloud, and it's not just the cloud. As a new term, what I learned last week, there's also fog computing, which is a cloud that is much lower because it's really, cloud is going to be in this whole stack, right? It can be at a systems level and a community level. It doesn't have to be the way we today describe cloud, and that's another one of those terms that I think still will be better defined. So I like the fog one better. So what will it take? And I know this may be misleading, not quite a new industry, but, and I think Perry said it this morning, it's about the relationships. Just data alone and analytics alone is not enough, but it's creating new relationships, creating partnerships between private and public sector, creating new standards, creating a new appetite amongst all of us and our collective customers to really deliver new business models and to think outside of the box, to really capitalize on this whole big data trend and create tremendous win-win situations. And then, I'm still with CISCO, so it would be amiss not to close on this, to realize that IT is not just a widgets thing and it will solve it all, but it really is becoming kind of critical part in the whole shaping of the stack in every aspect as to how defining and discovering, to the theme of today, what the services are we want to deliver, why we want to deliver it, and who and how are they going to benefit from it, all the way down the stack to capturing and managing, controlling the data, and making it available to really kind of create a platform of innovation where we believe analytics is going to be a growing and a very important sliver, if you will, to drive and deliver us all the opportunities. Thank you very much.